Ethan in St. Louis, Missouri writes to me and he says, "Hey Paul, I found your videos very helpful in educating my non-audiophile friends that I'm and convincing them that I am not crazy and that this is in fact a real hobby." Okay. You might be crazy. I certainly am. I've been called worse. But this certainly is a real hobby. So good. I'm glad I've been able to help. In a past video, you said that a monoblock amplifier will sound better than a comparable stereo amplifier because the chassis, the power supply, the binding post, etc., are all dedicated to one channel. Do stereo power amplifiers in bridged mode share these advantages? Can a system with bridged stereo amps sound as good as one with monoblocks? Quick answer, yeah, sure. It has the same characteristics, but let's and some monoblocks are bridged amplifiers inside. So those words that I had used before to describe the advantages of single chassis power amplifiers apply whether or not the stereo amp inside is bridged or whether it is a dedicated monoblock amplifier. You still have one chassis, you still have one set of binding posts that you're using, one power supply, etc. So let's go over and discuss what is a bridged amplifier. Maybe we'll start there. If you take a stereo power amplifier, you have one power transformer. This is typically, right? One power transformer and two power amp channels. And each of those channels feeds off the same power supply. They share that supply, the power supply. Now we put a left signal in and a right signal in, and we get left and right outputs to feed the two speakers, right? In a bridged amp, you take that same stereo, and if the amp allows it, or you can do it yourself, but it's not so easy, if you invert the phase on the input so that as the signal is the input signal is rising on one channel, it's falling on the other. So you're doing the exact opposite. And so the signals are going like this. As we've talked before in a balance circuit, that's kind of what happens, right? As one is going positive, the other is going negative. So that's inverted phase. So we just flip around the phase, usually with just a switch on a stereo amplifier. So you have one input now, and that feeds the left channel that's in phase, and it feeds the right channel that's out of phase. Now, if you take your loudspeaker and you put one of its binding post terminals on the hot of one channel of the left, and you put the other binding post, loudspeakers have two binding posts, on the hot of the right channel, between those two, you'll have a signal, a balanced output signal, with up to four times, depending on if the amplifier has enough power to handle that, of power that you had in the first place. So a 100-watt amp can potentially become a 400-watt amp by bridging the amplifier. At that point, you have essentially made a monoblock amplifier. You're going to need two of those. Two stereo amplifiers, depending on how you set them up, are still going to be like monoblocks. So yes. Now, quickly, because I don't like these videos to be too long, we need to be a little careful because there is no free lunch in any of this. And what I mean by that is when you bridge an amplifier, a couple of things happen. One, the output impedance is cut in half. So if you're looking at, say, you have a 4 ohm load, all of a sudden now you're driving a 2 ohm load. If you have an 8 ohm load, you're driving a 4 ohm load. So you need to be careful, and you need to make sure that your stereo amp has enough some power to make all this work, right? So it isn't just bingo and it works. There's never a free lunch in engineering. So I don't recommend bridging as a practice. I think you'd be better off buying monoblock amplifiers and let the manufacturer do the work of figuring out how that works. But in answer to your question, yeah, it's the same sort of benefits. Okay? Thanks for the question. I'll talk to you later. Bye.